All right. Good afternoon, everyone, or good morning, depending where you're zooming in from. Very much looking forward to this morning's pop-up workshop on creating performance reviews that drive impact with Katerina Arsova, who's the head of people and talent at Leapsome, and Maria Helke, who's the senior people and enablement manager at Leapsome. For those of you who are not familiar with Leapsome, they are a people enablement platform. They're all in one platform for performance reviews, OKRs, and engagement surveys, drive productivity and increase employee growth. Before we get started, a little bit of background on our guest speakers, Katerina and Marie. As mentioned, Katerina is the head of people and talent at Leapsome. She is based in Leapsome's Berlin office and joined the company to drive Leapsome's growth across EMEA and North America. In her current role, Kate is focused on driving and developing innovative people and talent strategies that foster a people-centric approach, support business objectives, and drive a high-performing culture. Katerina holds a master's degree in HR management and entrepreneurship and a certification in executive leadership. Next up is Marie Helke, who is the Senior People Enablement Manager at Leapsome. She is the driving force behind Leapsome's enablement processes. Marie brings a unique perspective on performance reviews with a career that began in talent acquisition at Michael Page and Expero and evolved into enablement at Leapsome, where she has successfully built out their performance review processes from the ground up and optimized existing ones to boost efficiency and engagement. Marie is passionate about performance management and learning and development and is committed to fostering continuous growth. And I probably should have started with this because I know we have lots of folks that are from beyond the Troop community. My name is Tracy Avon. I am the founder of Troop HR. We are a modern day people organization and community and provide the ultimate resource for HR leaders across the US and around the globe. Quick housekeeping question. This is a pop-up, so it's going to be, not question, housekeeping update. This is a 30-minute session, so it's going to be quick. We will leave some time at the end for Q&A and circle back with you after if we do not get to your questions during the live recording. And if you do have questions, please feel free to enter them in chat and we will share them with our guest speakers. And so with that, let me stop my share and welcome Marie and Kate. Thank you so much for joining us here today.
Thank you so much, Tracy. And thanks everybody for finding the time to attend the session today. Very happy to see all of those faces. I know we're tight for time, so I'm gonna jump straight into it. If you give me a sec to share my screen. Okay, can everybody see the screen? Perfect. So today, as Tracy already mentioned, we're here to talk about performance reviews and how you can turn them into a powerful tool, not only for talent management purposes within the company, but also for overall company growth and success and driving productive culture and high-performing teams as well. Tracy already did the intros, so I won't dive too much into it. And looking into the session and the topic that we'll cover today, we'll look into the insights from our latest HR Insights report. For all of you who are not familiar, Leapsome does this on annual basis, and it has been a tremendously valuable source and material for a lot of HR leaders across the industry to not only gain significant insights, data, learn about best practices, but also have a sort of board to kind of like compare their own processes and practices within the company versus industry benchmark and what the rest of the organizations are doing. Letizia is going to drop the link to the report within the chat, so feel free to sign up. We will officially release it in the beginning of April. But briefly within the report, we'll look into data and share two important pieces that very much tie to the overall performance process. The data is coming from over 1,000 HR leaders across US and Europe. Second, we'll look into our own process within Leapsome. How do we drive performance management, how we do the review process, and how do we take follow-up actions from there. Marie is the real expert here, so she's going to guide you through it. And finally, we'll look into some actionable strategies on how to make the performance process a powerful tool to drive not only employee success, but also organizational success as well. And with that said, looking into the report, we kind of condensed all of the data and all of the findings into a couple of main insights. I won't give too much sneak peek here. The report is still to come, but what has been really interesting to see is how the role of HR leaders has been evolving and has been expanding over the years. With all of the cultural and market shifts that have been happening within the industry across the board, what has been super exciting and interesting to see is how much that shift has impacted the role of HR leaders, and seeing that trajectory moving further and further away from traditional HR service level to a strategic influencer and strategic partner to the business and to the leadership within the company. And while we see that typically traditional HR topics such as employee training and development, employee engagement and retention are still very much on top of mind for HR leaders and companies, and some of the areas where you would see the biggest accountability coming in. What's new and interesting is how much overall strategic company-wide topics such as building high-performing productive teams, making business critical decision comes on top of mind for not only HR leaders, but for the company as well. To draw the parallel and the comparison between what HR leaders see themselves as being accountable and responsible for versus what the CEO or the business leadership of the company sees as top priority for the business, we see that while employee training and development, employee engagement and retention are very much on top of mind for both, building high-performing, productive teams is actually the most important area CEOs would rank and would hold accountable their HR departments for. And yet again, this talks about not only the expanding aspect of the role of HR leaders, but also about that shifting trend towards more and more strategic and broader influence within the organizations. How we tie that to performance review process and why we actually dive deeper into it today is because we do consider the performance reviews are the foundational, crucial process that actually can move the needle on that productivity for the company, the business, and also for the employee. From setting a good, effective process, you not only stimulate meaningful discussions that improve the engagement and the growth of the employees themselves, also gives a lot of valuable input that fits into your learning and development strategy that develops the trajectory and the growth potential for the employees within the company, and overall helps you with building that high-performing, productive culture and teams across the board. And I think beyond that, beyond those core aspects, there's numerous other areas within HR where the performance process can come quite handy and helpful, such as helping you build a lean organization and complement your hiring process, ensure that your D&I strategy and your D&I efforts are supported and well-founded in having an inclusive and meaningful, fair performance review process, and ultimately it's a great chance to connect and have in-person time. Um, One of the things I love absolutely the most about the way we do reviews, and Marie will definitely talk a bit more about this later on, is exactly having those days and having that in-person connection around the review process, which actually facilitates a lot of meaningful conversation, a lot of peer coaching, a lot of helpful feedback around how to provide each other with meaningful, constructive, and actionable feedback and input. And with that, I leave the floor to Marie, who can guide you a bit more into what we consider a best practice and how we go about the process within Leapsome.
Yeah. Katie, you want to continue sharing? I think that would be, or no, I go.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
No worries, I have it. Okay, great. So yeah, I'm here to show you some best practices and how we do it. Because now from Katie, you've heard with what a performance review process can help you, or what can drive strategic topics, but how do we in detail do this? So we think the first crucial thing you need is a really good performance review template. Means which questions are you asking your managers, your team, the peers, and whoever participates in this process in this review template, whatever tool you use. And our review template is structured into four big parts. We have some reflective questions that help the employees to really dribble down, like what have I done in the last 6 months? What were the projects I worked on? What could have been done better? Where can I still improve? But what is already going well? And then we have a very structured skill assessment based on each role, seniority level, and so on, where we know that might not be possible for every company. This definitely helps us in driving those L&D initiatives. To really do structured skill gap analyses and set up the right L&D measures and initiatives for the upcoming 6 months, but also helps the employees with the very structured and individual personal development. Then we work, can you go one back, Kate? With the language assessment, which you can see on the right, and I will go into detail in a few seconds because we know it is very critical to define potential and performance. This can be, the make or lose thing in a performance process. And we also have integrated a rehire and reapply question, which really leads to the right decisions or the right discussions, because we also ask our employees if they would reapply to the role. And we have seen that from that, we have some internal movement in the team and so on, because people really speak up if they want to change their role. And with that, we can offer internal opportunities and really see it before we lose any talent. So this is really, really, really helpful, especially on the current talent market. And when you want to build a lean organization. Now we can skip to the next, because when you use a 9-grid or anything where you want to include potential, which we have just learned in the past is very crucial for us, because just dribbling down to performance was not enough for us. So we have the potential measure in our performance reviews integrated as well, and have defined for us 3 quotients that define potential for us. It includes drive, like motivation. How do people show up for work? Are they motivated? How is the resilience, and so on. Then a cognitive quotient. So how do they assess, problem solving? How do they go about more tricky tasks? That's also something how we define potential. And we also have the so-called emotional quotient, in which is a lot of self-awareness, interpersonal skills, team skills, and so on. And we have learned that that works very well for us. And on the other hand, you have the performance measure, which also needs to be defined very detailed, and it's also a critical measure when you want to work with this 9-grid or anywhere where you want to have performance integrated. And not all teams have clear KPIs, like sales or anyone else, where you just have clear KPIs and can say, okay, this is a high performer because they've overachieved their objectives. So we said we define performance based on speed of work, the solution orientations. How do they really then use the cognitive quotient from the potential, and also the quality of work, like do they really deliver high impact results, and how many feedback loops do we need until we have a satisfying result. I will go into detail how you really use this in a few minutes. But besides this very focused review template, we think it's crucial that you get your team on board. This is really a make or break point. And there it comes to three, I think, most important pillars. The one is the why. You really have to overshare. Why are you doing this process? What is your overall objective? What will you do with the results? That is something most employees are most interested in. Like, will I get promoted? Is this a preparation for anything? Like, is this your succession planning or whatever are you doing with those results? That's what most employees are very interested in. And the more you over communicate it, the better. The other thing we have learned is the timeline. Like, no one will be on board when you do your performance reviews during end of year closing or when the big summer holidays are. So really find times in your calendar or throughout the year where you just know, okay, then we might have time for it. There also our managers have time to write the feedback, to really sit down with the employees and talk about growth and development. Because when it comes as an on-top task for managers, yeah, this might be also very tricky for you in the P&O team to push this process and get a high completion rate. And one thing we really like at Leapsome, or what we do is we really want to create an experience around those core processes we have at Leapsome. So this means we find ways to gamify our performance reviews, to offer focus time, and also have fun enablement sessions. And here I want to share like some best practices which we have integrated, which lead to high completion rate, with which you can then create impact. We have so-called review jam days. Those are days we spend with the whole team, preferably in the office. We order a nice lunch, nice breakfast. Those days are meeting free. The P&C team is there to help with writing feedback. So everyone sits down and writes their 360 feedback, means your upward feedback for your manager, for your peers, and your self-assessment. And we have seen that this normally already leads to roughly 80% completion rate of the 360-degree reviews, which is great to see. The other 20% are more from people who are sick or on PTO or whatever. But this really helps to, have it done, most of it. And followed by that, we also have manager feedback fast, on which the whole company knows, like, my manager might not be so approachable these days because they now sit down and write their top-down feedback. So this both helps a lot in the completion, and also most managers, when you don't offer this focus time or meeting free days, I think you also know this feeling, like often those feedback writing comes on top of your daily tasks, and there isn't really like, time set apart for it. So this really helps. And then we also offer one-on-one coaching for our managers by our people partners or by trusted external coaches to really support them, especially when they might have more tricky feedback to deliver. So this is also something we really support. Okay, if you can jump to the next one, because we're really short on time. So as we mentioned, these best practices can also help to create connections in the office, which is a topic that is discussed these days. And we just think there must be a reason why you come to the office, and if it is connecting and finding a way to write your review, a nice lunch and so on. So this can really help. And we've also seen that it supports the connection. People talk about the process, people talk about or just battle themselves of, I've already written all my reviews. Have you done it as well? So this is really fun to see. And we go to the next slide or the next topic. I want to circle back at this point a little bit on how you define performance and potential, and how you make it fair and also inclusive. As Kate has said, like a good process can also help you with your DI initiatives and strategy. We have a 3-stage calibration process. And what I want to point out here is the pre-calibration. Before the managers sit down and write their reviews, we sit down with them, the people team, and discuss this with them what each number on the scale really means. So before they even write the reviews, the whole company is very aligned on what each score means. And this then leads to way more effective team calibrations and company calibrations, where you again sit down and talk about, okay, what are now the results and where do we maybe have to make adjustments? but this pre-calibration step really helped us in making those more efficient and more effective. And now you might wonder, how do you create real impact? Like, you've done the whole process, all the results are in, but what do we do now? And I think the aftermath is just as crucial as the whole process, because it is super important that you offer those tailoring development plans. You might see in our 9-grid those different colors. Those in our case are paths, development paths, for which we offer very tailored and targeted measures. For example, on the right upper corner, the high potential stars and high performers get specialized coaching sponsored by us. Then everyone in the core path gets other L&D initiatives that is accessible for the whole company. And we also support especially our managers for employees who are a growth opportunity, average performer, or at risk. For those, we have special plans, because we think that is then where you can create impact with which you reach this retention and engagement across the company. When you see it's just not about getting results in and having the data, but really care about the aftermath and the growth. So that's so far from me. And now we have left some time for questions. I was very fast. So if you have any questions, looking forward to them.
Please feel free to enter questions in chat. I actually do have some questions that were sent in prior. So I'll kick us off as people are getting their typing fingers ready in the chat. You kind of glossed over this with the overall discussion, but one of the questions that I have here is, how do you minimize friction to ensure 100% participation?
With that, for sure, our product helps a lot, to be honest, because I can filter it very much down, and at one point it comes to one-on-one conversations and messages, but also we have the timeline in the calendars for everyone. Like, the whole company has calendar blockers 3 to 4 months in advance, so everyone knows when this process is coming up. And this now has led, we have now completed the 3rd one through of this new process we have implemented. This leads to that people already reach out to me and say, like, hey, I'm in PTO there, like, what can we do, and so on. But having it in the calendar and really sharing when does what happen and where is which deadline helped a lot. And for sure also a good product in which you can see who hasn't started, and reaching out to them and asking, like, hey, do you need support with anything, has really helped to reach this high participation rates.
And maybe to chime in there and follow up on that one, I think a lot of that outside of the process ties to overall culture, operating principles, and kind of expectations from leadership and from employees. And that's something you can anchor the process within, and tie it to your values, tie it to your culture, and tie it to the expectations from each level and each employee within the company.
Thank you. I'm going to shift us to the chat questions. I'm going to read them out in case any of the listeners are not viewing the chat. This is from Danny, who asks, how was change management getting to this final version?
I think we've seen quite a couple of versions and iterations over time. We did try to minimize those to ensure that the process is sticky and employees and managers remember what we've done last cycle. They can take it and implement the learnings next time, and also have some sort of comparable, consistent data that you can then run analytics and run data analysis based on. But I would say that it probably took us a couple of cycles to get to the version that we have today. And by no means this is the final. I think it's very much an iterative process. We do try to get feedback from employees each and every time to see how much of a valuable and be helpful this is for them, for their day-to-day, for their development, growth, and then try to take that into consideration and implement it within the process.
Yeah, And maybe just add on, like on the first iteration, we really shared on which feedback this process is based, because we had some feedback also around, performance reviews or feedback in general in our engagement and pulse surveys and so on. And this really showed like, hey, this is built on your feedback. And I think this also got us some buy-in from the very first moment and made the change management to implement such a process or to change. It's maybe a bit complicated for those last minutes now. We changed more or less the frequency of them, and made it a bit bigger process internally. But this got us very good buy-in from the very first moment.
Thank you. Next up, Priyanka asked, or first said, great overview. Since you warmed about timelines, what best practices would you recommend? We are Berlin-based.
Yeah. So we have the review in Q1 and Q3. So this just works best for us because our business year is connected to the normal calendar year. I've also worked in companies where the business year started somewhere else, so you maybe have to align to this. But this works good with, as I said in my presentation, end of year closing, the summer holidays, any public holidays and so on, because now in Q2 you have a lot of public holidays in Germany, so that might not be the best moment. And then in Q4 you have Christmas, end of year closing and so on. So that's why we have just learned, Q1 and Q3 works best for us. So we do a 6 months iteration.
Dana asked, do you have more information on the 9 grid?
What in detail do you mean by more information?
Dana, if you want to email hello@troophr.com, we can certainly send you a sample of what a 9 grid looks like. That might be helpful as a good starting point. I know we're pressed for time, so I want to keep the Q&A flow going. Next up, Katarina asks, what analysis do you do after the performance reviews?
Yeah, so as Marie mentioned, we definitely look into completion rate. Our target is 100%, and we do strive to achieve for that. We also look at time, how long on average it takes people to finalize this, whether the majority of the reviews are done within the review jam days, whether they need additional time, and why is that, how we can incorporate that within the planning and the duration of the cycle. We'll look into the distribution on overall level per company to kind of get a rough idea of your talent density. We'll look into skills gap, so what's missing, and then we do a bit more granular analysis and kind of look at that per department, per team, per function, and so on and so forth. And then we try to do a comparable analysis and see what's the overall pattern or movements from one cycle to another or over a couple of different cycles to see whether there's improvement, whether there are any certain trends, whether there are any repeating topics, and whether there's any feedback. Marie does an amazing job. She collects quite a lot of qualitative feedback past the cycle as well from employees and managers alike, to one, get a sense check on maybe a couple of small iterations we've done, and B, get a sense check on the overall process and what we could do better or what we can improve from one cycle to another. And then she does a thorough analysis on the qualitative feedback as well beyond the numbers. Then it's super helpful to take into consideration and potentially look into improvements for the next cycle.
Yeah. And maybe just one add-on here, which is also very interesting, normally for our leadership team, with our tool, our modules, it's also possible to track how certain performance groups answer engagement and pulse surveys. So this is also a big analysis we drive, and which is very interesting to see like how your core talents and high performers are doing across the company. Like, are they happy? Do they want to stay? And so on. And that helps a lot with prioritizing initiatives as well.
Great. Well, I want to be thoughtful of time because we are at the top of our time here together, which just flew by. Clearly, based on the questions in the chat, this does deserve further discussion. And as Letitia from the Leapsome team shared, they will be happy to answer any and all of your questions if you want to connect with their team. We at Troop will be sending out a post-event recap where we'll include the contact information to make sure we open the lines of communication between any attendees that have follow-up questions, as well as feedback for today's session with Leapsome. And so with that, thank you, Kate. Thank you, Marie. Thank you, the team at Leapsome, for continuing to share this incredible resource with us as performance reviews evolve, and that is happening rapidly. But we can always count on you and your team to keep us as HR professionals ahead of the curve, making sure that our organizations and employees are receiving the best performance review support that they can. So thanks to everyone. Again, we'll be following up with emails and appreciate your time today.
Thank you for having us, Tracy.
Thank you for having us. Yeah. Have a nice day or afternoon, wherever you are. Bye.
Have a lovely rest of the day to everyone.